I'm not ashamed of who I am, but it bothers me that I'm that way. Why am I that way? I got an image of something that's just totally not what that is not about. I come from a place where I want fear. Look at my career. I thrived off of fear because I was afraid. I wanted people to fear me. The heavyweight former champ, and this is what former champs represent. Whatever manlyhood is for my fist. That's just who we are. America's that way. That's why I'm that way. We take what we want. America takes what they want, and that's the same toxic energy that guys that are immature and insecure we feed on. The toxic masculinity. To hide who I really am.
Pull up, I pull up, pull up, pull up, I pull up, I pull up.
Coucou, what's up? It's Kadija, aka the musingknomad, and I'm back again. In today's episode, y'all, we're going to break down the Mike Tyson and Boosie interview. I was actually not going to watch this. I had no interest in watching this, but I was listening to an episode of The Read, and Crystal was like, y'all, go watch that. Go actually watch that. It's good. And I was like, because we have to realize Mike Tyson is a convicted rapist, an abuser, and I'm like, those are already triggering for me. So I was like, this most likely not something I'm gonna watch. But I was like, okay, I like my good girl, Crystal, and I love me some what's his name? The Read. Anyways, but I was like, okay, my good girl Crystal was like, okay, check it out. I was like, okay, let me check it out. Checked it out, pleasantly surprised. I've actually watched it several times because I wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything that I was going to touch on. But I would definitely actually urge y'all to watch it. It was actually good. And y'all, I was surprised. Mike Tyson knows toxic masculinity. I was like, one of the most toxic of the masculinity, or one of the most toxic men knows toxic masculinity. I was like, okay. I mean, bravo to growth. And I don't know his daughter, but I also want to say bravo to her because she's the one that pushed him, especially with regards to the trans and homophobia talk about Dwayne Wade's child. She pushed her dad, to Mike Tyson, to get into Boosie about that. But I was here for it. So for today we're gonna like I said, we're gonna break down the video and we're gonna talk about toxic masculinity, patriarchy, growth, self-respect, all the stuff that Mike touched on, and how little Boosie, whatever the fuck his name is, was just kind of like sitting there like, ooh, because this is the thing that's funny to me, right? Men, especially when they're kind of being told off about themselves or their bad behavior, they rather hear it from another man because they know, like, they have the concept of the alpha beta situation. If it's some alpha talking to them, they ain't about to be like about it, right? They're gonna be like, okay, let me sit down, fuck up, let me listen, right? Whereas if it's like someone at their level, you get what I'm trying to say? They really kind of have that. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist as well with regards to females, but and when I say females, I mean within all the animal kingdom, because we animals too, even though humans like to think they're better than everybody else. But anyways, with regards to female and male, there is this concept of like alpha, beta, all of that, right? And Boosie wasn't, he knew damn well he ain't about to be all buck with Mike Tyson, because just one, he knock you the fuck out. So I would just hear where he was shut the fuck up and he was listening, and it was nice to see. And a lot of y'all need that. A lot of y'all need that. Shut the fuck up and listen. One of the things that Mike said, and I think was really poignant, and this is how you see he's really done the work to grow and better himself from what he used to be. He said, I used to be you. And he specifically said, and this is not a word I generally use, nigga, I used to be you. And I was like, I mean, I'm glad you're addressing it because we know what you about. But in the discussion, basically, Boosie comes in, Mike is smoking his joint, and I guess all of them are really smoking, and he's just asking them questions. He's like, yo, I'm not judging you, right? He made it a safe space for him to talk, because he was also he made it a safe space for him to talk by basically saying, I was like you, I'm like you, right? I'm not judging you, I get you. He was, it was kind of, making him feel a little good, making him coaxing him a little bit to make him he was basically making him feel like comfortable to like bring down his guard, right? And that's a really good approach for some people. Like that's the approach that they need to for them to really listen. And some others, like myself, for example, when I'm telling something to somebody, I'm telling it like it is. Like, you know, like I'm not about to be like cobbling things to make you feel better, i.e. my Black Men Are Trash video. Check it out, because a lot of people that commented in that video were really triggered. But I think sometimes, you know, another approach that actually works sometimes a lot better too is this. But I think also you need the approach of like, yo, putting you to task. Here is what it is. I mean, especially if somebody gives you the facts about things, the only argument you have is to deflect. And that's what a lot of these motherfuckers were deflecting in my previous video. But anyways, I did think it was a good interview, and now let's get into the nitty gritty. So Mike Tyson asked Boosie, what do you think about self-respect? And he didn't understand what that meant. So Mike had to break it down for him. And Mike was just saying, you know, explaining about his past, how he, as a young adult, as a child, came from toxicity and abuse, and in turn created an image of himself, and thought like the ideal version of what a man should be, you know, this aggressive, toxic, all this stuff, like knock you out and, you know, not giving a fuck about nothing, right? And he basically was saying that like he basically has been doing the work to better himself, because he's like, yo, I've tried to kill myself several times, but I'm still here, and that means to me that I'm supposed to do better and advance and grow. And I was like, that's dope. And in my Black Men Are Trash video, I talked about how like using the likes of like Malcolm X, for example, that is somebody that is like my kind of revolutionary spirit, right? But I have to reconcile with the fact that this man was a pimp, right? And he didn't go into too much detail about like his ways, right? And who's to say he didn't rape somebody, beat someone up? Like, this is the same man who participated in very misogynistic behavior, violent, brutal behavior against women, and is also the same one saying like Black women are the most disrespected women in the world, right? And I guess with both of them looking at that, right, you have to understand that growth does happen. But regardless of that growth happening, I'm still gonna side eye y'all, because I'm like, look at what you did in the past, you know? And this is kind of, and if I were to make this simpler, this is kind of like the concept of, you know how you have those white people who are like, oh yeah, I'm for equality and all that stuff, but you're not really an active bystander. You're just kind of like, oh yeah, I voted for this, but you don't really do anything to get rid of like white supremacy, etc. You get what I'm trying to say? And that way, that's why I'm kind of like very like about them. But I will have to give it to him from the way he was putting out certain concept, for the way he was approaching the conversation. You could see this man has actually done the work. He's done the work, and all of us are continually working to grow and better ourselves. And that's why in that video where I was talking about like how Black men are trash, it's like at the end of the day, you need to take accountability for your actions. It is not because of your parents, it's not because of this, because there's so many factors that make us the way we are, right? It's not just like the onus is on my background, my this, my that. No, at some point as a grown-ass adult, you need to take ownership for your behavior and say, okay, these things may have happened to me in my past, but what can I do about this now, right? I'm the one that has to control and change whatever image of myself that I have, and the world, whatever it has for me, right? And in the video, he talked about self-love, and it's honestly, it's beautiful to see. And I think a lot of men actually need this. It's like you realizing and seeing these things and teaching this to quote unquote younger generation. It's necessary. And it was beautiful to see, you know, Mike talking about that. He's like, I look at you, like I'm seeing, basically I'm looking at myself I'm looking at myself 30 years ago, right? Where I was you, right? And it's like, for me, what you're showing is somebody that doesn't have a lot of self-love. Because if you're spewing all of this vitriol and hate towards certain people, and you're not really working on yourself and realizing I don't really need to say nothing, right? You don't have a lot of self-love and self-respect. And Boosie was just taking it and shut the fuck up. And I was like, and a lot of us, need to hear that. Not even just like Boosie and himself, like everyone needs to hear that, where you talk to somebody that's like a mentor to you, or somebody that really that sees more in you, where they're kind of telling you about yourself, but it's in a way to make sure that you are growing and advancing in this life. You get what I'm trying to say? Mike brought up the thing about like Dwayne Wade's child, and Boosie basically said, Mike was like, why don't you just shut the fuck up? Like, why, if you ain't got nothing nice to say, why do you say anything? Like, what about this person's life? How is that affecting anything in you, in your life, right? And Boosie said basically, well, you know, I just have to say something about it because, you know, it was a 12-year-old child and I don't think it's right. And I stand by what I said, even though he did later, quote unquote, apologize. But he's like, I stand by what I said, but it's a 12-year-old child. Interesting, right? Because it's the same motherfucker that had the nerve to say he had his children, his boys, raped by women just to ensure that they're not going to be gay. Like, you're asking to be in jail for like child endangerment and child trafficking in my mind. Like, you had your kids, you came out and said that, right? You had your kids raped, because if they're young like that, you had them raped. So I was just like, that portion, I'm just like, you're dumb. Like, for me, honestly, like, yeah, it was just unnecessary. It's like there was no need for you to say anything. And what does someone living their best life, living their true authentic self, how does that affect you? How does that affect you? And this is why when Mike brought up the toxic masculinity portion, and also he said to Boosie, I mean, are you actually a homosexual? Since I thought that was funny, the way he said it was really funny to me. I mean, maybe you're homosexual since you keep like always having something to say about them, and you just, you know, trying to prove that you're not. Maybe you actually are. And he's like, no, I'm straight as that arrow. I mean, I think that point that Mike made was good, and I'm not saying he is or he's not, and if he was, I don't give a fuck. But it's like there's certain people where it's like they're probably fighting things within themselves that have to like be super on the defensive and always have to say something to prove something. But it's like, nobody asked you. No one asked you, like, you know? One of the things, again, back to toxic masculinity that Mike was talking about, and if some of y'all don't know what that is, because I'm sure that's a word that's like thrown around all the time, toxic masculinity is basically the idea that like, when in the society that we live in, right, the idea that boys will be boys, right, the idea that like men shouldn't cry, don't show an emotion, like just be super aggressive and super like alpha, whatever, right, like that is what the ideal image of a man should be, right? And this is why a lot of men, even though you do benefit from patriarchy, you don't even realize how patriarchy dehumanizes you. Because if some man were to show any emotion apart from anger, you're weak, you're not like alpha, you're not this, you're not that. And I think that is so sad, honestly. I think it is so beautiful as a man, as a, I don't know how to say this in English, viril, is that a word in French? Viril, like, I don't know how to say that in English, but like when someone is like really like, you know, like that big, strong alpha, you know, looking man or whatever, like you can look like that, but also be sentimental, also be vulnerable, also be all of these things, right? And it's sad that like within patriarchy, men don't even realize how it dehumanizes you. Like, how sad is it you're telling some 4-5-year-old boy, oh, he can't show emotion, he can't cry because that's not how you should be a boy. That's not what a boy should be like. That is unfortunate and it's so sad. And people need to realize like you're not benefiting your child by doing this to them, right? Saying you can't show emotion just because you're a boy. That is awful. And then also not allowing them to do certain behavior, again, because they're a boy. They can, you know, do this. Like, for example, let's think about how, as like, if you grew up with siblings, right? And even if you didn't, I'm sure you know friends or people that have this. But let's say you live in a household where, let's say when you're a teenager, let's say 15, the rights that you have as a boy versus the rights that you have as a girl are very different. Your parents are going to be one, especially as a girl, your parents are going to be like, no, you got to be home by this time because no, you ain't about to be fucking around or whatever, right? But then your son is around here fucking around and you don't really say nothing. You get what I'm trying to say? Or he has a longer curfew. Or he might even get more money from allowances or whatever. You know what I'm trying to say? How you see how you're treating your kids and saying, okay, one is allowed to like do all these extra stuff, whereas another one isn't. We need to control this one more, right? So again, with toxic masculinity, and Mike has portrayed that to the T. Okay, we go back, look at what he was like, look at his videos of like talking to like I remember the video of him talking to this reporter, basically saying like, I'll fuck you right now, I'll rape you. I was like, fuck? You get what I'm trying to say? Like, and this is something Mike said, and I think it was really good that he said it. He's like, yo, I'm a predator, right? And I'm working on myself, but I still have that in me. But I am a predator. Because he admits that he is a predator, he's like, at the time, you know, when I was like coming out and I was gaining fame and all this stuff, I wanted people to fear me. I thought that's what it was like to be like, you know, strong man, whatever. I thought this is what this life was. They also go into the topic of like how many kids they have, and both of them have 8 goddamn kids. I was like, 8 fucking kids. 8? That's a lot of goddamn kids. Like, and Mike said, the reason I have 8 motherfucking kids is because I was in love with my dick. And that's what he said. He's like, I was so in love with my dick because I thought like happiness came from things. I thought happiness was having, you know, all these bitches. That's what he was saying, right? I thought happiness was all these unnecessary things when happiness was here. Happiness was here. Happiness was within me. And all of these tangible things meant absolutely nothing. Nothing at the end of the day, right? And Boosie didn't understand this concept when Mike said this. Because Boosie was like, you know, Mike asked them like, what made you who you are? And then Boosie was like, you know, I came from a slum, and Mike was like, no, fuck all that bullshit. I came from there. You know, I've been through all that stuff. I'm not asking you about like why this is. He's like, I want to know why you are the way you are, right? Because it's like some of the things that you were saying is just to make excuse of your action. Or of your actions, right? Mike also touched on emotional intelligence when he was talking about the Dwayne Wade situation. And he was saying it's like, you know, he said he agreed with Boosie about how he felt about that, which I was like, okay. But he was like, but at the end of the day, and this is kind of like my philosophy, it's like, this has nothing to do with you. You have nothing nice to say. Why say anything? It has nothing to do with you. It affects nothing about your fucking life. Not a damn. But for whatever reason, you feel like you always need to say something and speak up about something, right? And here you are harming and hurting other people by doing that. By not having emotional intelligence. By not having any care about other people's feelings. Right? And Mike was like, you know, why don't you need to like consider other people's feelings? And I was like, I honestly was like really, I won't say I was floored by it, but I was like, you know, bravo. It's nice to see men putting men to task. Because women do it, but they don't like to hear it and they don't listen. But it's so nice and it's so refreshing to just see men putting men to task and them actually taking it in and listening. You get what I'm trying to say? And then later Boosie basically wanted to pander and say, because he's like, no, I have like gay friends and gay this and gay that, and I don't have any gay homophobia in my body, bullshit. But it's like, no one cares about none of that shit. Like, that's fine. No one cares about it, right? It's like, at the end of the day, if you're being kind to other people, that's all that matters. That's all that matters, point blank. Something that I wanted to touch on, and this part to me I love this part. This is actually probably like my favorite part, and if I can, I might even include the clip in the video. Mike brought up the fact that, like, you know, he's been married several times, and how everybody that's in your life, especially when you're in an affluent position, like, you don't really have control over your life, right? Everyone that's around you is who's really controlling your life. You're not the master of your life. And he gave the example of like, oh, so you have an assistant. Okay, the only reason you're calling her an assistant is because it boosts your ego and it makes you feel better, makes you feel more powerful by saying this is your assistant. But at the end of the day, if you didn't have this person in your life, a lot of the things that you're doing, the things that you're trying to do wouldn't be possible because they're helping to build you, right? And he said something when they were talking about, like, you know, wives and partners and stuff, right? Because Boosie said something along the lines of like, basically, you know, it's just lust. I need my woman, my wife, to bring me other bitches in the room so we can have threesomes, because at the end of the day, it's just lust. That's what it is, right? And Mike asked him, okay, so when she gets tired of that, then what? And he's like, well, I back off for a little bit, and then, you know, I'll try it again. But he's like, you know, it's just lust. But then it's like, again, back to the self-respect and respect for other people. It's like, you know, hey, at the end of the day, if within your partnership, y'all allow that, y'all like having people come in to your bedroom or whatever, that's on you. As long as y'all are, you know, you're all consenting adults, y'all agree with that, that's cool. But to have the idea that, like, you're going into quote unquote marriage, right? And and again, for me, I've already said this before, marriage, I don't believe in the institution of marriage. That's not something I idealize. I don't really care about it. It's just a relationship at the end of the day. It's a relationship that it's a contractual relationship at the end of the day, where it's going to be a little bit harder for you to break up with a person because you got to divorce them and all that, right? But, so for me, you know, that's my point of view with regards to marriage, right? But it's like, a lot of people have this concept of what marriage is, and generally it's like a partnership between two people, right? But y'all are bringing other people into your situation because you're allowing other people to fuck around in your situation, and then you're just saying, no, it's just lust. It's like, do you really think this feels good for either you or your partner to be doing this? But you know, if it is good for you, it is what it is. I ain't judging you about that. But he said something, and Boosie, unfortunately, he's a little bird brain, he didn't really grasp this very well. These are some things that Mike said that will relay us to the next part of the conversation. He said, you know why we have women? To make us realize that we are men. We look for women like our mother, but our mother could never be our lover. Everything she does for us, for you, is for survival, meaning the woman that's not your mother, right? Whereas everything your mother does for you is for your survival. So, and then Boosie didn't get that. He's like, oh man, you just broke some stuff down. Yeah, no wonder she didn't love me, because she couldn't love me like my mother. And he's like, no, you're not listening. You're not listening. Young one, you ain't listening. What I'm telling you is, because you were raised by a woman, right? You feel like any woman that comes into your life should love you to that extent, right? Basically, take up all your bullshit and love you the way that your mother loves you, right? But, and also coddle you like how your mother coddles you, right? And this is something I've been saying. Women are not your mothers. We're not your mothers. You've been weaned from the breast of a woman for years, that you come to us wounded and half filled with promises you can only keep half the time, trying to suckle our sense of self dry. Okay, that is from a dope Def Poetry Jam by Maida de Veld, which is called To All the Boys I've Loved Before. I'll link that below. But it's like, women aren't your mothers, right? And you have men especially have this expectation that like when you're with a partner, that she basically supposed to just put up with all your bullshit and just love you to the end. But as Mike said, okay, she'll be there, but if you keep dogging her, she gonna leave your ass. And he said that, and I was like, yup. And also, it's like, again, your mother's gonna love you because she's gonna do everything she needs to do for it, because it's for your survival, right? But as individuals, as other, you know, women that are just in your life, we're not worried about your survival. We're worried about our own survival, because at the end of the day, we are human beings. We like, you know, we're a bit selfish, whatever, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, I'm here for self-preservation, point blank. But your mother is gonna have your back to the end, because that's your mother. You came from her. She made you, right? So she's gonna protect you by any means necessary, right? But she'll also check your ass if you need to be checked. But just hearing Mike touch on all of these little concepts that a lot of people, you know, might not understand or don't want to understand was so refreshing. And I have to say a round of applause for him for doing the work to really grow and get better as a human being. And it was interesting to watch. And for me, as like a feminist, a black woman, someone that is trying to dismantle patriarchy, I will say I was biased in watching this, because I knew of the two characters on this, and I was like, but watching it, I was just like, I'm so happy that he's grown and evolved as a human being, and I'm hoping that he will continue to mentor and educate other men who need this kind of mentorship, because it is necessary, right? But anyways, that is everything I wanted to touch on. Y'all, if you have any questions, or if there's anything that stood out to you in this video, or if you haven't watched it yet, please do comment below what you thought about it, because I was actually like, brava, like, and I didn't waste my life watching it. I was actually impressed, mostly with Mike Tyson. And it was just like, I love seeing Boosie kind of just scrumming around and like not saying nothing because he was just scared. I was just like, I mean, maybe not scared, but he didn't really understand a lot of the deeper things Mike was trying to, you know, explain to him. And, or, you know, it might be foreign to him, so it's a little hard for him to like digest everything at once, because that was, you know, that was kind of a lot. But it was just nice to see, like, yes, men putting men to task, yes, brother, like your girl was happy. I was happy to see it. But anyways, that is everything. Thank y'all again so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Your girl will be back soon for a new video. Peace out, bisous, and hugs.
Pull up, pull up, I pull up, pull up, I pull up, pull up, I pull up, I pull up.